But first, the Adelaide Hills are alive, and not with the sound of music, but rather with the screech of freight trains. And with plans to put even more freight through the hills, it's only going to get worse. It's now led to renewed calls for a rail bypass and also for a road freight bypass to ease truck congestion on the South East Freeway, funded perhaps by tolls. They come in the day. They come in the night.
We've had people measuring it up around the same as what a jet engine gives as they leave the airport.
Sometimes they come in the middle of an interview. Well, even that was making a bit of a screech.
That's a very quiet train. If all the trains were like that, Simon, honestly, you probably wouldn't have an issue. We wouldn't have an issue. But no, that was good.
The trouble, according to Stephen Woods, is so few trains are good. Passenger trains are fine. He says freight trains using the twisty, steep Adelaide Hills line are making life a misery for nearby residents.
When the kids were growing up, 20 years ago, it was a bit of a novelty thing, and it was good fun. In the last few years, since the upgrading of the line and with the freight trains, it's becoming, they wake you up at night time. The back windows shake depending on the weight of the trains and the length. It's annoying. It really is annoying.
It's not the rumbling of the trains or the noise of the locomotive that bothers them, but the screeching and moaning of the wagons that's the issue. Some will pass by with barely a sound. And on the same train, others just won't be quiet. Rob Hatcher believes the only thing that cuts the noise is to increase the complaining.
Every time there is a bit of static politically in the media or public outcry, they do come and do a bit more maintenance. But when the noise subsides politically, as far as protest goes, then the noise level increases again.
The noise has increased quite significantly, and that is just coming from too much of a consistent theme from too many people who are not organised in any fashion, who singularly come into the office.
This is not a recent issue, and over the years the Australian Rail and Track Corporation, which manages the line, has smoothed the lines, put in grease boxes and also monitoring devices. It says it has worked to reduce the noise, but it can't say that noise will ever be eliminated.
Sometimes it's just to do with the angle of the rail, sometimes it's to do with the wheels on the wagon. Well, you do have metal on metal. You have metal wheels on metal rail, and sometimes that causes a wheel squeal, and we do what we can to mitigate it. The track through the Adelaide Hills does have some tight curves, and that can sometimes exacerbate it.
Now, from some residents' perspective, it's set to become worse. The ARTC says it's on the cusp of approval for a new passing loop around Verdun. In effect, it will enable more freight on the Hills line.
It's an important rail link in moving goods from east to west. Our mandate as the Australian Rail Track Corporation is to increase capacity. That is to get more freight off-road and onto rail, and this is a vital link in doing that.
You can't upgrade the existing line through some of the steepest and tightest curves in the world for rail freight traffic through heavily populated, heavily wooded areas, which is the Adelaide Hills. It's the weakest link in the national network.
The solution, according to the Deputy Mayor of Mitcham, Mark Ward, is a northern bypass, avoiding the hills by taking rail freight out past Murray Bridge and Truro and joining up with lines north of the city. Last year, he said a federal government study concluded it would cost $2 billion and not be worth it.
The criteria that they set at the start really narrowed the actual brief of the study. And a lot of people think produced the outcome they wanted to produce, which was let's just carry on as normal, it's too expensive.
He argues only the Greens have really backed a northern bypass, with the Liberals and Labor making motherhood statements. Until now.
It is just not sustainable to have this line as our major freight route into the city of Adelaide into the future. It's clearly not.
Jamie Briggs is the federal Liberal member for the Hills-based seat of Mayo. He wants a full northern freight corridor, both rail and road, because he says the southeastern freeway too is getting close to capacity. And transport planners agree the very nature of the Hills puts a brake on the expansion of both.
Certainly in the medium to long term there'd have to be a capacity issue because of the difficulty in, say, duplicating a rail line, the difficulty in doing anything in terms of the existing road network, the freeway through there. And then we see all the new development proposed for further out on the hills. So what are the alternatives then? I have to say, what should you be doing differently?
To pay for a northern freight bypass, Jamie Briggs is contemplating what traditionally has been political poison, a toll.
Well, there will obviously be a cost, and if that is something, if that toll is required to build this, then if this is major economic infrastructure for the future, then we should look at a toll for the future.
I think that at the moment a government or an opposition that promotes tolls in a sense is perhaps bravely taking on a public policy area that has been fraught and has been difficult and is risking something of a public backlash. Certainly at this stage of the debate, it may mature in time.
In Australia, tolls have been used to fund both public and private transport projects. This bridge is a famous example. Professor of Transport Planning Michael Taylor says toll roads have worked well in Melbourne, but private transport projects in Brisbane and Sydney have been commercial failures. In any event, he says they should be part of the mix.
I would say they most certainly do as one of the options to examine, and I think we don't do ourselves a service by saying, well, we're not going to consider that particular alternative.
Michael Taylor argues the economics of a northern bypass may not add up for years. They didn't for roads in Melbourne. But he says the problem of the hills versus growth will see it regularly back on the agenda. And toll or no toll, that's just where residents want it to be.
The guys that do control the purse strings, and please just look at it, from a long-term perspective for residents of the Adelaide Hills.